Let's turn to David Keyes, who's a spokesperson for the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. And I note, Mr. Keyes, that Mr. Netanyahu, or Prime Minister Netanyahu, said it had been a glorious day yesterday. In the light of the deaths and the injuries, would he want to perhaps recalibrate that view? Good morning.
Good morning to you. Of course, what he meant was that it was a glorious day in the fact that it was a long overdue recognition of the simple fact of where Israel's capital is. Jerusalem has been the capital of the Jewish people for 3,000 years and the capital of Israel for 70 years. So stating that plain fact was a good thing. Now, of course, deaths anywhere aren't a good thing. But in order to explain the context, you have to understand what happened yesterday and in the previous few weeks. And that is that tens of thousands of people had gathered directly on our border with the express purpose of storming the border. This is why we saw people shooting guns and rockets and placing bombs and indeed cutting through the fence, saying that they were going to kill Israelis. The terrorist organization Hamas, which runs Gaza and has been a primary sponsor of these events, their open aim, as they state clearly, is to annihilate Israel and to kill every Jew. Those aren't my words. Those are the exact words of leaders like Ahmed Bahar, the deputy speaker of the parliament in Gaza, who said, kill every Jew down to the very last one. This is outrageous. This is just absolutely unacceptable.
But
Israel is doing what any country would do, which is defending its citizens from this onslaught.
But does it move from being defence to a more aggressive position, Mr. Keyes? Because my listeners will be confused. They see demonstrators hurling rocks and burning tyres on one side, and they see the IDF with some of the most advanced military kit in the world on the other. One wonders if it's a fair balance.
Well, they should take a look at the pictures of Palestinian terrorists placing bombs and throwing Molotov cocktails into Israel. They should.
I think that's where the line has gone. I fear we might have lost. Okay. Let's see if we can get Mr. Keyes back. Let's just try and get a quick response from David Keyes before the line, who's a spokesperson for the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. I was talking about the imbalance that many of my listeners perceive, throwing stones and blazing tyres as opposed to some of the best military kit on the planet. Mr. Keyes, your response to that?
Sure. Sorry, the line cut out before.
No worries.
Well, first of all, you have to look at the context, which is that what Israel did is it prevented a massacre because had tens of thousands of people, some of whom were well armed with knives and guns and bombs, been allowed to cross and just traverse the few football fields, and the civilians, the mothers, the women, the children who live right there could have been subject to the very massacres that Hamas has committed time and time and time again. They've blown up buses, they've blown up schools, they've blown up cafes, they've launched tens of thousands of rockets at Israeli civilians. But I think the point of your previous guest really gets to the heart of the matter, and that is that he utterly rejects the existence of the state of Israel. That is what this conflict is about. This is what Hamas's leadership openly says. They say, Israel az-ziwal in Arabic. Israel will be annihilated. That is why there is violence, and Hamas bears total responsibility for the travesties that we see today by throwing their people into war, by calling for the annihilation of Israel, by targeting civilians, and by announcing their aim to try to kill every single Jew.
I'm very grateful we got you back on the line. For time reasons, I have to move on. David Keyes, thank you. You're a spokesperson for the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. We will